Hello and welcome. My name is Will Dawson, and in this video, we're going to have an alternate ending to Matthew Marquit's most excellent tutorial on Construct 3. In Mr. Marquit's tutorial, he had been working with a series of assets that had the attack function that he was going to have for his player was that there was a bow and arrow and he was going to shoot a projectile. Since we've been working with our character just swings an axe, we're going to do a modified version of his ending. So we're not going to have projectiles per se, but we're going to use the same functionality. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a slash that is, so instead of having an arrow that travels, we're going to have sort of a slash shape that traces the arc of where the axe swings, and that is going to perform the same function as a bullet or an arrow that might travel across a screen and hit something. Ours is not going to travel across the screen, although you could very easily do that. What I would like to do is just give you a quick, at the moment, overview of where we are in my version of the level. I'm using CraftPix's free assets. They've got a lot more assets that match this style for very reasonable rates, something like $3 and $5 per enemy pack and stuff like that. So, but everything you see here is from the free assets. We've got one of the player characters here. This is the woodcutter. Here I've got a townsperson from their townspeople set. I've colored this sprite with a sort of a green color to give us sort of a zombie look here. You can see the fences that I've got that will be invisible during gameplay that are going to make the enemy run back and forth here. I'm using these flags as my checkpoints, so I'm starting touching a checkpoint, and that will allow me to respawn if I die to this first enemy here. I'll respawn back at the beginning. I have another checkpoint down here. I have left a space where I can fall through for my character to die that way. And this is a moving platform that will rise up and down and allow me to access this coin up here. Now we're going to make ourselves a slash sprite. So what's going to happen is that when our character swings his axe, we're going to have like a white curve that sort of traces the path of where the axe swings. And that is actually going to be its own sprite. And we're going to add the bullet behavior to that. So we don't even have to have it move as if it was a bullet, but we don't want our character to touch the enemy because the enemy is already programmed to kill us if we touch it. So instead of having ourselves touch it with the axe, what we're going to do is we're going to have it create this slash thing. And if the slash touches the enemy, then that will the slash will kill the enemy. So let's make this thing. I'm going to insert a new object, and let's grab the sprite. Just drop it out here outside. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start by drawing a circle. We are going to fill it. I'm gonna have this be white. So if you don't have white picked already, just grab whatever color you have up here and bring it all the way to the end. There, you can just grab the little arrow and slide it. I think white works the best for this. So I'm gonna grab the circle tool, and I don't want to go from the center. I want to go from a top corner. So I'm gonna sort of put here, and I'm gonna draw not a circle, but sort of an oval shape like that, and that's probably fine. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to actually just duplicate this this frame a bunch of times so we have the exact same slash, and then we're going to erase bits of it so that we get a little slice of the edge of this, and then a different slice that's farther around, and then the slice out front, and then the slice on the bottom. So before we do that, let's actually set up our collision, because we don't want this giant square to be what the computer considers to be whether the thing is touching the enemy or not. So let's make this thing actually shape itself. Let's see. Whenever you double click on a point here on the collision tool, it is going to go clockwise around the perimeter of your collider. And so if I double click on this, it's going to go clockwise around and put a point halfway in between it and the next one. So if I double click here, I'm going to double click on this one, and it's going to put a point right here. So just double click right here, and it adds a point. And I'm just going to kind of manually put these in place so they kind of are tracing. It doesn't have to be exact by any means. But what I want to do is kind of trace half of the circle. I just want the front half of this. So that's probably fine, just like that. Okay. So now we've got our collider set up, and now we can just take this and erase a bunch. So I'm just going to take this and duplicate. I'm going to make like 5 of these. I'm going to turn the background, because I've got white on this white and gray background. It's a little bit hard to see what I'm working with here, so I'm going to switch to the higher contrast version of this. So I'm going to leave the original, and I'm going to actually modify frame number 1 instead of frame number 0. The computers like to count from 0, so this is the first one. 0 is the first one. 1 is the second one. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to grab the eraser tool. And here we've got a size. So you can, if I've got it set for 24 pixels, you can see that it's going to erase a circle that's 24 pixels in diameter. So I'm going to leave the hardness set all the way up to 1. If I turn the hardness down, it gives me this fuzzy edge to it. I don't want it to be fuzzy. Maybe you want it to be fuzzy, but I don't. I'm going to leave it with a hard edge, so just like that. And what I'm going to do here is, what I want to do is I want to just erase everything except for, let's say the axe is going to start swinging from right here. Let's say that your character is standing in the middle of this, and we want to trace this arc of where the axe is swinging around him. So he'll be standing in the middle of this, and we want to erase everything except for just a little bit that shows where the axe is going. So I'm going to turn this up really big, bigger than that, because I'll notice it leaves the ends of this on. So 223, let's bring it up to like 300 something and see what that does. Okay, that's closer, but I want it even bigger than that, I think. Let's go to like 400-ish. So that, if I put the eraser right there and just leave this little arc at the top like that, I like that. That looks like, so I just clicked that and I erased it. So that's going to be the first frame of animation that we see as the axe swings. That's what the bullet is going to look like. So if we turn our collision back on, you can still see that it shows what actually counts as touching the enemy or not. So this will count as touching him, even if the white part of what we have up here is not touching the enemy yet. If the enemy is like right here, this will still already count as a hit. Okay, so that's what frame number 1 looks like. Frame number 2, we're going to erase a slightly different chunk. I think I want a smaller circle. I'd like to have a little more curvature on the inside there. I might have to do this with two cutouts, I think. So I'm going to go right. I'm going to go even smaller. You just have to kind of fiddle with this until it looks good to you. Maybe a little bigger than that. That looks pretty good. And then I'm going to get a bigger one to cut the back of this off. How's that? That seems fine. Okay, so you just have to kind of, so here's part number 1, here's part number 2, and you can see how that as it animates is going to feel like the axe is traveling around in this arc. So there's part 1, there's part 2. Let's cut out a new chunk for part 3. Let's have that be, yeah, that's fine. And then the rest of this I can just kind of get rid of. So here's part 1, part 2, part 3, and then part 4 will have just a hint left in the bottom corner. Like that. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we probably don't even need the 5th one. Let's have, let's do this. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to erase everything. I'm going to erase the entire thing in part 0 and in part 5, because what we actually want is for the animation to start where you don't see anything. Before he swings the axe, there's not supposed to be anything. Here, we can see it travel around, and then at the end, again, we don't want to see anything. Now, if there's some sort of a glitch where it doesn't get destroyed right away or something like that for whatever reason, we don't want to have this little snippet of white still hanging around for some reason. So I like to stick an empty frame on the end. And that is pretty good. Now that will still have our collider on it, which is fine. So let's have a look at the animation here. We don't want it to loop. Speed 5, I don't know. We'll see what that looks like. So let's actually take this and preview it. That is too slow to be an axe swing. It should, that's taking its sweet time. So let's take that instead of 5, let's take that up to 10. And preview that again. Swoosh, swoosh. I still think it should be faster than that. So let's try 15 and preview. Okay, that feels like it could be something. There's my phone going. Okay, so I like that. That's fine. Now we have that. I'm gonna name this animation. Always name stuff. I'm going to name it slash, I guess. And we'll close that down. So there's my slash. Notice it's huge. We don't need it to be huge. We don't need it to be tiny either. We can actually resize it here. Once we stick this on the character, we'll resize it and handle all that in a minute. For right now, I just need to make sure it's not actually in the level where we can see it. And of course, that thing is called Sprite, so we should rename this as well. So I'm going to call it slash as well. So the name of the sprite is going to be slash, and the name of the animation is also going to be slash. And we're also going to need to have the behavior. So I've got my slash selected over here in the project window, and over here in the properties window for the slash, we're going to add the behavior of a bullet. So the fact that it's supposed to hit the enemies, the fact that it's supposed to move, all this kind of stuff, it's an independent thing that's going to travel. We probably don't want it to have a speed of 400. We'll play with that in a minute when we get put the events in to operate that. Now we have to do all the programming to make this thing actually function. So let's go to our event sheet here. Let's add an event. And what we need to do is have a keyboard input to initiate our attack. So what I'm going to do is on key pressed, I'm going to use the space bar. So I'm just going to click on that and press the space bar so it registers that that's what I want. And okay. And I'm done there. So on the space pressed, we're going to do two things. We are going to first have the player start his attack animation. Let's see, set animation as attack. Done. Okay, so we're going to set the attack animation. And just to be double sure, I'm going to go and look at the player. And attack, A-T-T-A-C-K, is exactly what's written here, because this is what it's going to look for. If you spelled this wrong, make sure it's spelled wrong in the other place too, over here. So if those match, then we're in good shape. So we want it to set the attack animation, and we also want to, for a moment, deactivate the, I've got this group of, up here, player movement that's got our changing animations and our left and right turning. All that kind of stuff is in this player group. We need to deactivate this for a moment while the axe swing animation plays. So what we're going to do is have the system set group active right here. and that was called. Once again, we have to know what the exact thing is that we named it. So I called mine player movement, and we're going to set it to deactivated. So once again, player movement with capital P, capital M, and a space right there. I'm just going to double check to make sure that's exactly how I did it up here, and it looks right. Okay, so I think we've matched it. All right, now let's test that to make sure it does what we think it's going to do. So here is our project. I'm going to bring the guy out in front, and I'm going to hit the attack button, and he does, in fact, make the attack. Notice we've deactivated his controls, so the platformer functionality is still on, so my left and right and jump all still work, but he doesn't turn left or right anymore, and none of the animations switch the way that I programmed them. So we don't want to deactivate his platformer behavior, because if we were to attack in the middle of a jump, we still want the physics to take him up and down. We still want him to be able to land on solid things. So we can't deactivate that, but so far so good. The attack is happening correctly, so it is setting that. Now let's add another event to have it spawn that slash object. So we're going to grab the player, and we're going to look for his animations. When a certain animation is playing, we're going to have a whole bunch of stuff happen. So the animation is the attack. We need to make sure that this triggers only one time. So I'm going to add another condition here, and we're going to have the system trigger only once. Trigger once while this is true. Right there, when the animation attack is playing, then this thing is only going to happen one time. Otherwise, this would happen over and over and over for as long as he was swinging his axe. Every millisecond, it would try to do this again, and we don't want that. So we have to add this trigger once in there. Main thing that we're going to do is we are going to just add an action. The system is going to create an object, and that object is going to be our slash. And we are going to, of course, create it at player.x, and why is it jumping up and down like that? Player.y. So player.x and player.y is exactly where we want to be. Done. All right, I don't know why it did that, but I discovered that if I grab the bottom of my window here and just move it up and down, then it reset that. So that's got a weird browser thing. Okay, so we've got our, it's going to generate our slash. Let's just make sure that it does that. Okay, so we have the axe swing and swoosh. It only triggers once, right? While the animation is playing. And it never comes out of, it never tells us to go back to any other animation. It's still the attack playing over and over. So it's only giving us that first slash. But notice that when we do that, the slash is giant. Swoosh. Okay. And it's moving away from us rapidly. There's a couple of things happening there. So first of all, if we go back to the layout, the thing is huge, and I remember I stuck it up here. So at the moment, we've got the size of this thing is 250 by 250, and I mean you can see how big. You remember how big the oval was that when we drew that in here. It's about that big, and so it's giant compared to the character. So what we can actually do is over here in the size of this thing, we can instead of 250 by 250, let's make it 100 by 100. And just see what that looks like. The other problem is that it's moving away from us. So I'm finding it annoying that I can't trigger this again. So maybe let's, before we fine tune this, let's actually go back in and add some more of this functionality. Add another event. the player's animations on finished, right? The attack animation is finished. So when that's done, we are going to have the system set group active. And that is going to be, of course, the player movement group set to activated. And the player group, notice up here, sets the animations for us. Set animations to jump, walk, idle. So that should actually take care of it. It should reset our so now, because the attack animation is being started and it's not already going because I've set back to idle, so now it's allowing me to begin the animation. So that trigger once thing from over here, the animation attack is triggering only once. It never went to a different animation, so it only let us attack once. In this case, this works a lot better. So now I can hit it over and over, and I get a better look at what I'm doing. So I can fine-tune that slash. It looks like it's still pretty big, and it's moving away from me. I think the most annoying thing is it's moving away from me. So I'm going to grab the slash object here, and I'm going to come over here to its behaviors, and here we have its speed. I'm going to set its speed to 0. Yes, the bullet is going to not travel. So let's just see what that looks like. Slash, slash, slash. Another thing that we're having the problem with is that the player's origin point is right here at the base of his feet. So notice that the slash is sort of centering on that spot. And that's not at all what we want. We want it to be centering more around the middle of him. Well, that's an easy thing to fix. There's two ways that we could do it. One is that we could, instead of creating it at player X and player Y, we could create it at player X and player Y minus a few numbers, so that remember all the Y numbers are measured from the top down. 0 on the Y-axis is up here, and we count lower from that. So if his feet are here, let's just say that that's 200. Then if we were to say player Y minus 50 or something, that should put it close to the middle of him. That'll reduce the amount of pixels below the top of the screen that he's doing that. But in this case, I'm just going to go to my slash. I'm going to edit the animation. Here's my finished one, and I can see kind of where everything is. Okay, so this right now, I'm just going to hit the resize here to see that 250 is the size of the thing at the moment. So I'm going to grab my origin point tool here, and right now it's set to 125, 125. That's halfway and halfway. But let's take the Y and move it. Let's see, I think we can do it that way. Notice a smaller number moves it higher. I'm going to just move it down until it looks like I'm going to move it back up just a hint. Okay, let's say that's where his feet are. Let's try that. And real quick, let's apply to the whole animation. Okay. Getting things fine-tuned is sort of an art in itself. Okay, I like this much better. I think it's still too big. It's starting above his head too far, higher than his axe actually swings. It finishes down here by his feet, and I like where it's finishing. But let's actually reduce the size of this thing a little more. So the slash is 100 by 100. Let's make it 70. Okay, I can live with that. Now, it swings out in front of him, but I'm fine with that. It really does look like the axe is, I don't know. It feels fine to me. one of the things that we have happening now is that slash, and then we turn the other way and slash. The slash is not switching directions with us. So we need to make that happen as well. What we're going to do is we're going to go back to this here where we are creating the slash object, and we're going to have a sub event. Now, this is a little bit tricksy. In order to get a sub event to create, what I'm going to have to do is click on, like if we were looking at this keyboard one, I can't click on the keyboard. It doesn't give me the option to add a sub event here. But if I click in the gray block underneath it right here, it says add, and I get this giant menu, right? And I can add a sub event. So this is the one here that we want to look at, but our little area that we can click on for the right click is tiny. So sometimes if I'm having to add a sub event, but this area over here is much smaller than what's over here, I don't get any of this little gray area underneath. And so what I'll have to do is add something that I don't even want over here just to make it bigger. Like, for example, maybe I'll just add a system does reset variable. It doesn't even matter, right? Now this is big and I can add my thing, and I'll just delete this thing in a moment because I never even wanted it. So what I'm going to do right here is I'm going to add a sub event. We're going to test whether the player is mirrored. That's going to be, so if the player is mirrored, and let's get rid of our dummy system event over here. Let's just trash that. Okay, so now we have our sub event. Remember, the player is mirrored up here. If we press the keyboard left or right, we're setting him to be flipped so that he points left or right. So if he is mirrored, then we want the slash to also be mirrored. So we're going to set the slash appearance set mirrored to mirrored. And that should do that. So chop, 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 chop. I think we got some magic happening. Yep, should be good enough. Okay. That's that. I think the only thing that we need now is to have our zombie take damage from that. So rather than having the slash test whether it's hitting a zombie, because we want to manipulate the zombie, it's actually easier to have the zombie test if it is making contact with a slash. So let's create a new event. And we're going to go to the zombie here on collision with another object. And that object is going to be the slash. Yes, done. We want a number of things to happen here. We've got the zombie. When we look at the zombie, remember that we have created an instance variable, and you'll have done this when you make your enemy from Mr. Marquit's video. You'll have given him a health value, hit points or whatever that is, and on mine I've got 3. If you don't have that, definitely add an instance variable, right? This is going to keep track of how many times you have to hit the enemy in order to deliver the final kill. So we got to hit him 3 times in this case. When we make contact with him, we want the zombie to have a visual cue that says, oh yeah, I got hit. We want the thing to pause for just a split second. We want it to flash, and then we want it to go about its business as if it didn't notice us or whatever. The way that we're going to get it to pause is we're going to add a system action that sets its time scale, set object time scale. We don't want to change the whole game's time scale. We just want to change the object's time scale. And so what this is 1 equals normal time and 0 equals time has stopped. So we're going to make sure that we're changing it for the zombie. And we're going to set its time scale to 0. So that will make the thing stop. First thing, we're going to, I suppose we need to damage it. So let's take the zombie and manipulate its instance variable. So let's go down to its instance variables. So we're going to subtract from its instance variable. we could just set value, but then we have to do math. Let's just subtract from, right? Yes, we have the patrol number and we have the hit points. That's what we want to do. And we're going to subtract 1 from it. That's perfect the way it is. So we're going to subtract 1 from its HP. We are going to change its color. Right now I've got the zombie, this sort of ugly green color right there. That's because I loaded in my character from CraftPix's sprites, and then I changed the color to this green over here, and it tells me what the color value is. This is an RGB color value, so the red amount is 68, the green amount is maxed out at 255, and the blue component is 200. So a mixture of some amount of red, some amount of green, and some amount of blue is what's creating this color. And it's almost like you've got the original sprite underneath, and then you've got like a clear see-through translucent like overhead projector page or something like that is this color that you're putting over the top of this guy to make it look this way. So what we're going to do is I'm going to have it flash red or something. Let's go back to the events. So we're going to add an action here. Once we've stopped it, the first thing we're going to do is subtract HP, and then we're going to take the zombie and we're going to set its color. Let's just okay, set color. That should work. Okay, RGB, red, green, blue. So I want this to be completely red, so I'm going to leave the green and blue amounts at 0, and I'm just going to set this for 255, I believe, is fully red. Now, before I continue, let's just make sure that it does, in fact, turn the zombie red when I hit it. So, where's my zombie? There we go. Slash. Yes, it stopped him and it turned him red. I like it. Stuff is working. Now let's have it wait for a split second before we set its color back to normal and start its time again so it continues to walk towards us. So we're going to add an action. System is going to wait. There we go. And some tiny amount of time, like 0.1 seconds should be fine. Just enough to give a visual indication that it did take the hit. So wait 0.1, and then we're going to set the color back. So we'll have messed it up to 255.00, and we're just going to look at the numbers over here and put it back the way it was. So zombie color, set color. Okay, so we want, that looks like 68, comma, 255, comma, 200. Done. And then we are going to set its timescale, set zombie timescale back to 1, so it does normal. So add the action, that's a system action. So we're going to set object timescale to 1, and that's going to be the zombie. Okay, looks good. Let's test it. Always test every little step to make sure. Okay, ooh, color got a little weird. Oh, I understand what's happening. He keeps taking a hit over and over and over, and that's because we have not destroyed the slash. So, when the attack is finished, we're setting the group back to active. We don't have a for when the slash animation is finished. That could trigger it to be destroyed. So basically what was happening is that my zombie was walking back and forth, and it kept bumping into my old slashes. Notice that my slash over here, if we edit the animation, my last one is completely empty. There's no actual information in this. So it's still there with just this. There's nothing to see but this barrier is still there. So it kept bumping into my old slashes that didn't look like anything anymore. So, yes, let's add a new event and have our slash. Oops. Animation on finished will destroy itself. That's, oh man. I think we called the animation slash with a capital slash. Let's just double check to make sure that that's what I actually named the animation. Yes, slash. Okay. So that matches what we just typed in here. And we're going to have that take the slash and destroy it. So when the animation finishes, the slash will be destroyed. And that should stop the zombie from running into the slashes over and over. Okay. It's not running into anything. And we're good. Now, what's also weird, though, is that this is not the same color that I had before. It should be exactly the same because I put in the numbers that I had already on the character. Here's my zombie. Let's just give it a different number. For some reason, that should work, but it's not. So I'm going to darken this. I'm gonna give it values of about half of this. So I'm just going to edit that number. So half of 68 would be 34. Half of 255 would be 127-ish. And half of 200 is 100. Okay, let's see what that does to the color. Because it was too bright, so we'll darken those. Okay, there's the color you see. It still got brighter. So we can actually fiddle with those until it gives us a color that we actually like. It shouldn't look like the thing changes color, and I don't know why why this is not just giving us the same effect as when we put those numbers in. But I'm not gonna stress about it now. The workaround is that we can just we can get those numbers to make it look okay. All right. One last thing that we have to do here, and that is to make the zombie die. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the zombie and we're going to check its instance variable. It's got this hit point instance variable, and we're going to just check on that. So instance variables compare. We're going to compare an instance variable. So we're going to see if its HP is equal to 0. That's perfect, except that it's not actually perfect, because if you have a weapon that can hit harder later in the game, maybe it does 2 damage. So on the first swing, that would take this value 3 and it would bring it down to 1. And then on the second hit, it would bring it from 1, not to 0, but past 0 to -1. And we want it to die if it goes to 0 or if it goes to -1. So if we hit it and it just jumps from 1 to -1, it'll never be 0. So just as a safeguard, let's instead say it's less than or equal to 0. There we go. Easy fix. So if it's less than or equal to 0, then let's create an effect here. Let's have the mud splash. We don't want it to just disappear off the face of the earth. But if we create that little mud splash, at least there's some sort of a visual indication that something happened. So we'll create the mud splash. And we're going to create it at zombie.x and zombie.y. There we go. That looks good. Done. Get my screen reset here. Okay. And of course we want the zombie to die as well, but we want to create the mud splash first because we're using the zombie's coordinates to tell where to go. So now let's take the zombie and destroy it. Test. It's kind of strange. Okay. Slash. Slash. Oh, he got me. Still, he should have two hits already. Slash. Yep. So he had the little mud splash, and there's no more zombie. And I collect my coins. So let's see that one more time. Just enjoy the fact that we've got it happening. Slash, slash, slash. There we go. So, all right, I'm gonna post one more video for you guys. That is, we're gonna throw some sounds in this. I'll have those audio assets, and we'll stick those in, and we'll export a finished version of this that is just going to be a standalone app that you guys can play on your Chromebook, phone, computer, whatever. Export a PlayStation version. I don't think we can do PlayStation here in the free version, at least, but yeah, it'll be cool for you guys to dump out a finished product that you can show people later. All right, guys, see you soon.